Okay. Hi, everyone. I hope you are enjoying the product-led summit thus far. Thank you so much for tuning into this lesson. This is called Words Matter, How to Write with Empathy for a Better Converting Customer Experience. As for me, who am I? I'm Natasha. I am a senior content strategist at FullStory. And if you're not familiar with FullStory, we are a digital experience software that allows brands to understand and index user interactions that happen on their digital properties, like their website or mobile app. For my part, I have always been a word person. I'm an avid writer and reader in my day-to-day life. I also have a background in journalism, and I come from the world of content marketing. So before coming to FullStory, I was the head of content at Wider Funnel for 4 years, which is a conversion optimization agency based in Vancouver, BC. And ultimately, my passion is helping organizations communicate more effectively. And I'm hoping that I'll give you some tools in this lesson that will help you communicate more effectively with your target audience. So in the title of this talk, I assert that words matter, but let's step back for a second. Why do words matter for us, for product folks and marketers? What are we trying to accomplish with our content and copy? Well, I would argue that we have three main objectives. So at the base level, we are trying to inform and educate our audiences because people can't engage with something that they don't understand. So your content, your website copy, emails, ads, in-app copy, the point of all of these words is to communicate information. But of course, in business, we are also trying to get people to do something. We are trying to persuade and convert. We want someone to take an action. Whether that action is simply coming back to our site or reading more of our content or actually buying something, our words need to persuade and they need to convert people. And then on a deeper level, words help us foster a connection with our audience. And this is really about word choice, which I'm not going to get into too much today, but it's really important to start thinking about. So here I'm really referring to the textual and visual cues that you're using that work together across all of your brand touch points to create a subconscious feeling for your visitors and your users, a feeling of, I like this, or this fits me. And that feeling is critical to creating connected customers. So we have these primary objectives, but oftentimes we miss the mark in written communication, and we fail to accomplish even the basic one of these. We fail to even inform our audience as well. This is a quote from a famous playwright, George Bernard Shaw, that I'm a little bit obsessed with because it rings really true, to me at least. He writes, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." And I think this is a very apt description of most of the words that you see out in the world. I mean, when was the last time you read ad copy that moved you to act, or got a marketing email that actually caused you to take an action? For me, at least, they are few and far between. Our communication is so often ineffective, but we cannot afford to be ineffective because every touch point is a valuable opportunity to reach and nurture prospective customers. We can't afford to keep dropping the ball. So let's stop. Let's stop dropping the ball. In this lesson, I'm going to be talking about how to communicate better by always keeping your user and their desired outcome in mind, by forcing yourself to walk in their shoes. And this isn't easy. I'm sure you all know this. Effective written communication is hard to do. To inform and connect with our target audiences, you have to keep that audience, that individual even, in mind at all times with every piece of written communication. This is tough, especially because many of us have multiple competing priorities. For many of you, content and copy may not even be your primary job, which means we're all executing and trying to ship content quickly. and it's easy to slide into habits that favor speed over effective communication. We get into these cycles where we're doing for the sake of doing, and we're not really thinking about whether or not our messages are landing. Which is why I am a huge proponent of frameworks and framework thinking in general, because a good framework will allow you, it'll actually guide you in thinking about the messages you're writing from differing perspectives. And it will teach your brain to explore all of the possibilities outside of just your own internal mindset. And because it's a framework, it should allow you, once you internalize the steps that you need to do and the things you need to think about, should allow you to move quickly and effectively at the same time. So this is Wider Funnel's Lift model, and it's one of my favorite frameworks for writing more persuasive content and copy. Of course, there are tons of frameworks and different types of frameworks you can use to improve your written communication. I'm sure many of you have heard of IDA or ADA and PAS. I like Lift because it's not 100% copy focused. It actually encourages you to look at your words within the context of your user's full digital experience. So there are 6 factors within Lift. And in the context of this lesson, 6 factors for writing more persuasive copy. The first one and the central factor is your value proposition. This is the most important information you are trying to communicate in any message where you are ultimately trying to get someone to do something. And this is the promise of value to be delivered. It's the primary reason someone should take an action. Now, the other 5 factors are really promoters or detractors of a conversion action. So next is clarity. This one's pretty straightforward in theory, but we get this wrong so often. We really use a lot of extraneous information. We use more complicated words when we don't really need to. The basic idea behind clarity is, are you communicating your value proposition for easy comprehension, easy understanding? Relevance is the next promoter. And relevance is about meeting your audience's expectations, matching their needs and feelings, meeting them where they are in the moment that they're reading your message. Urgency is about introducing factors or matching factors that could cause someone to take an action right now. So does your audience have some internal urgency, or are you creating external incentives where it makes sense? For our detractors, distraction. This is a huge one. Anything that diverts your user's attention, your reader's attention away from your primary goal. And then anxiety. This is anything that might be creeping into our content and copy that is causing uncertainty for users about taking an action. So to make this a little bit more tangible, I wanted to break out a few questions you can ask yourself as you write. An amazing thing about employing the Lift model is that in asking yourself these simple questions that are aligned to the factors I just reviewed, you are pulling yourself out of your internal focused mindset, and you're forcing yourself to think about your user's perspective and their whole journey. So I apologize in advance. This is a text-heavy slide, but these questions I find are very, very helpful as sort of a checklist when I'm writing persuasive content or copy. So some value proposition focused questions. Am I communicating the value proposition immediately? And how am I doing it? Am I highlighting value proposition points that are actually important to the reader, that aren't just things that I think are valuable? How do I know that these points are important to my reader? Is it my opinion, or can I back it up with some evidence? In terms of clarity and relevance, is my text easy to read? This is almost more of a design formatting question, but it's super important to consider, especially in digital. And then is it easy to comprehend? Oftentimes, if you're in the world of content and copy, you know, recommendation is to stay at about an 8th grade reading level. So super simple, short, clear, concise sentences. And then on the relevance side, where are my readers coming from? Does my copy acknowledge the source and also where they're going? And then is my content personalized for the reader and their context? Be careful with this one. You can get distracted by trying to over-personalize Frankly, it's better to create a journey that is relevant to your biggest audience, and then personalize from there if you have the resources, if you can. In terms of finding distracting information, how many action items can the reader take from this piece of content or landing page or email or copy? Are there competing concepts or textual cues? Am I trying to say too many things at once that are distracting? And can I minimize extraneous information? Do I really need all of these words, all of these points? Again, going back to this idea that our content and copy is trying to persuade and convert, trying to get someone to do something. And then anxiety. So on the flip side, does the reader actually have all of the information that they need to take an action? And are you accidentally making the reader uncomfortable in some ways? Final note, if and when you can, it is always super useful to get a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth opinion wherever possible. Having fresh eyes review your content and copy, especially if they are also thinking about these questions, can be super helpful. So depending on how important, how high of a priority the content is that you're working on, bring in fresh eyes to review it. Okay, so we just walked through the model, gave you this big list of questions, but let's actually look at an example. I'm going to show you a couple of examples that are actually pulled from FullStory's own messaging. So this is stuff that our team has worked on in our marketing, sales, product, emails. And I'm going to focus on email for the rest of the talk because email is really, really important. As you can see, 99% of consumers check their email daily. And for most companies, it is our most important content delivery system. But for all of its importance, we often neglect it. Like I said earlier, like I asked earlier, when was the last time you got a marketing or sales or product email that you actually read and that actually motivated you to do something? I'm betting there aren't that many that come through your inbox that actually motivate you to do something. So let's think about how we can improve it. First example, we're going to look at some email copy. So this is a version of an email that was written to promote one of FullStory's webinars. And I'm just going to read this aloud. Subject, webinar. Is your product solving the right problem for your users? Hi, George. As a product manager, you probably spend a lot of time thinking about what to build and how to build it. But the secret to success is ensuring you truly understand the why behind what you're building. In fact, there are 5 whys you need to ask to get to the core problem your product can solve, and our VP of Product, Justin Dilly, is hosting a webinar on December 2nd at 1 p.m. ET all about how to drive to the why. You can save your spot by registering right here. Can't make the live webinar? Go ahead and register, and we'll send you a recording to view at your leisure. Okay, so copy, content people, you're probably already seeing some issues with this email, but let's put it through Lift. So I've highlighted here a few pieces that really stuck out to me, and we'll go through them one by one according to the Lift factors. So our opening sentence, going back to this idea of communicating our main value proposition quickly, immediately, we have this sort of weak opening statement. As a product manager, you probably. Introducing the word probably at this stage immediately weakens whatever else we're saying. So you probably spend a lot of time thinking about what to build and how to build it. Instead, can we go in with a stronger value proposition statement or a question that will trigger them to think about their most important value prop need? And by that, I mean, can we trigger pain and present a solution, the solution being the main value right away? In the second sentence, secret to success. This is a cliche. We're already in a sales and marketing email. It's ambiguous. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's not very clear. Can we get more tangible? Can we tell them more directly what we'll be giving them? Again, with clarity, understand the why. When I'm reading this quickly, it reads a little bit, it could read as incorrect. It could read as a typo. We need to be clear about what we're saying. In this next sentence, I'm sure you could hear as I was reading through it, this is a run-on. So we've got multiple different pieces of information. So this is also, it's clarity and it's also distracting to have all of these concepts grouped together. So we're telling them who's speaking, we're telling them what this is, we're telling them when it's happening. And then we actually have two redundant, I would argue, not very strong value propositions, which are all about this concept of driving to the why. But that is still kind of unclear to me. So in the top of the statement, we have there are 5 whys to get to the core problem, and then at the end, how to drive to the why. So we're really hammering home this idea of the why without, again, giving them something tangible to hang on to from a value proposition perspective. And then another clarity point, our final call to action is a bit wordy. Can we cut it down? Can we make it simpler? So let's see our Postlift version. So, hi, George. How much energy do you spend thinking about what to build and how to build it? Wondering if that fix or feature is really what users want. So with these two questions, we're trying to stoke some pain so that we can present the solution as our strongest value proposition statement right away. And these two questions actually come from internal experience talking to FullStory's own product managers, as well as external research where we see that uncertainty around the product roadmap is a big concern for a lot of product teams. So then we hit them right away with a value proposition statement. It's aspirational. Now imagine being 100% confident in your product roadmap. 100% confidence. That's what you will get from this webinar. This isn't a pipe dream. By asking 5 whys, and here we put whys in quotation marks so that it's easy when you're scanning through to understand that this is not a typo, it is actually a concept, you can get to the core problem your product can and should solve. Simple. On December 2nd, join FullStory's VP of Product, Justin Dilley, for an exclusive webinar. And here we added the term exclusive to stoke some relevance a little bit, to make it feel like we aren't just mass marketing this webinar. We've actually handpicked you to attend this webinar because we believe it will be really relevant for you based on what we know about you. Super subtle word choice, but that's the idea behind what we're trying to do. So this exclusive webinar where he'll provide step-by-step instructions to help you drive to the why and get the confidence you crave. So what are they getting? Step-by-step instructions. This is tangible, again, value proposition. And then we've simplified our call to action, save your spot here, 4 words. Now, I'm sure this email is not perfect. I'm sure that there's lots more feedback and tweaking we could do to make this even stronger. There's testing we could do. But the overall idea is, again, to try to challenge whatever content and copy you're creating, put it through the LIFT model or whatever framework you prefer so that you can make sure that you are writing with your user in mind, with the things that are going to be valuable to them in mind, with ease for them in mind, with relevance for them in mind. Okay, so that was email copy. Let's look quickly at an email journey. And I want to look at an email journey because this to me really illustrates how we can weaken our messaging by not considering the broader journey. So again, real FullStory emails from a sales cadence. So I'm just going to read through the very first paragraph. You can see there's some linked text. So I'm going to get you there. Hey, George, at FullStory, we talk a lot about frustration signals. Measuring user frustration has historically been difficult due to factors like low survey response rates or vague user feedback. FullStory has changed that. Great. Okay. Assuming this email is relevant to me, I'm a product manager. Measuring user frustration is actually really hard for me because you're right. My response rates to my surveys are really low and user feedback isn't usually that helpful. FullStory has changed that. That's pretty exciting. How have they changed that? I'm pretty motivated to click this link and see. So I click it and I land on this landing page, which is actually a content hub. And the main things I see are FullStory for SaaS teams. Okay, that's fine, assuming I come from a SaaS company, which I believe this cadence was for SaaS companies. So hopefully we're okay there. But it doesn't really say anything about frustration, user frustration, how FullStory has changed how we measure user frustration. And if I scan over to the content that's above the fold, I see it looks like an article or a blog post called "The Map is Not the Territory for Digital Product Experiences," which is, I guess, kind of interesting. It's a little abstract. Again, I'm not seeing any mention of frustration or user frustration. So I'm a little bit confused. And frankly, this whole experience is lacking relevance. The email has queued me up to be thinking about user frustration, my difficulties in measuring user frustration, and how FullStory has changed that. And then I'm dropped into this content hub that doesn't really reference those ideas at all. So this brings me to information sent, which is a really important concept within relevance. Maintaining information sent is critical when you are writing your messaging. So whether you're writing website copy or an ad or an email, you need to consider where your reader is most likely coming from, and also where any linked text is taking them. And ask yourself, am I providing cues along the way to assure my reader that they are heading in the right direction, especially if it's a multi-step journey. So this is a long nurturing journey. We're trying to feed them through some content, warm them up, get them excited about FullStory. We need to maintain information sent. Otherwise, we'll lose them. So one quick thing I want to point out, because these fixes don't always require like big copy edits or big structural changes. If you look at this landing page, one thing you can see is that there's actually a video tile slightly lower on this page that says something about using frustration signals. It's a video, it has the word frustration signals in it, the phrase. So a really simple fix to just increase that information sent, increase that relevance, is to move that video tile above the fold. So let's replace that "The Map is Not the Territory for Digital Product Experiences" article and just highlight that video that is talking about using frustration signals. That would be much more relevant to how FullStory has changed measuring user frustration. So some of these fixes can be really simple. They just require us to pause and think for a little bit about what the user's experiencing. So still looking at the same email, one thing I do want to point out is that lower down in the email, we actually give them a whole other call to action. So we are continuing to talk about user experiences, frustrating user experiences, how we uncover them. If you'd love to see this in action, you can activate your free 14-day trial here, which takes them to a demo page. Now, I actually think the flow of this email copy is pretty good. What I don't like is competing calls to action. So I would challenge you to always think in an email, if you are linking someone to a place, can you make sure that that is the only link in the email? Or if you have multiple links, they're all linking to the same place. Because competing calls to action are distracting. So if the free 14-day trial is our most important call to action in this email at this moment, we think this is going to be what users need right now, then I would recommend unlinking that original text and not taking them anywhere else. But I would also challenge the writer of this email to think about whether the reader is ready for a free trial at this moment. Do they still need to learn more about the product? In which case, I would actually focus on that content call to action, as long as we make it more relevant. So these require some thought on our end, thinking about where the user is likely at, where the reader is likely at in their journey. But it's hugely beneficial because, again, multiple calls to action means that a user can easily get distracted and ultimately not take any action. Okay, another example within this cadence. So here we're using some social proof. We're introducing a case study, which is usually very effective. So, hey George, marketing automation software Autopilot boosted trial activations by 40% within weeks of installing FullStory. How did they do it? So in this email, we're actually linking them via the word Autopilot, and we're sending them to this page. Which is a written use case. FullStory helps software companies simplify onboarding, boost activation rate by 15%. There are a few things that are issues here. So first of all, the linked text is autopilot, but we don't say autopilot anywhere in this headline. So there's a relevance, again, that information sent. It would be really easy to replace software company with autopilot. Full Story helps autopilot simplify onboarding so that I know exactly right away I'm in the right place. I should keep reading. But a few anxiety causers. So in my email, they said something about boosting trial activations by 40%. But when I land here, I see that they boosted activation rate by 15%. That doesn't add up. That doesn't match. Another cause of anxiety, the date on this use case. This is from May 15th, 2015. This case study is 4 years old, almost older than that, 4.5 years old, which immediately leads me as the reader to think, this is an old case study. What's Full Story been doing for the last 4 years? 4 years? Do they not have a new software case study? And of course, we do. We have tons. This is just a factor of legacy emails being used over and over again and not being thought through at new and fresh intervals. So again, this stuff is hard to do when we're moving quickly, but I would challenge each and every person who is ever sending an email to really look at that email and think about the full journey. Simple next step, start lifting your own content. A few helpful resources if you want to keep exploring these concepts. So these are a few articles that I have written. I'm not sure if you guys will all get the slides. If you don't, please email me. I'm happy to share resources, send links. The first article I've listed here is called 59 Words and Phrases That Convert and How to Use Them. This is really about word choice, which I didn't dig into too much today, and also how to test your content and copy. The second article is really digging into the concept of connection and inspiration. So this is about creating emotional resonance for your shoppers. And so it digs more into that third objective that, again, we didn't really get into today. And then if you want more on Lift, more resources, more articles about it, just Google wider funnel Lift model and you will find plenty of stuff. In terms of other copywriters that I would recommend following, Joanna Wiebe is the original conversion copywriter. You can follow her at Copy Hackers. Eddie Schlainer and Jay Acunzo are also great resources. Their Twitter handles are there. If you are curious about Full Story and what we do at Full Story, just visit fullstory.com for more information. Or you can get in touch with me. So email me at Natasha at Full Story. You can follow me on Twitter at Nat Wahid. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk through any of the concepts I introduced here and answer any questions or start any kinds of discussions with all of you. So thank you so much for your attention today. I hope this was helpful, and go out into the world and start communicating more effectively. Thank you.